Yeah, thank you for having us. We're Ashley and Andrew Brietzke of Deguello Dogos out of South Texas.
Right on.
We've been hunting Dogo Argentinos for about 9 years, and this is our 6th year of hunting only Dogo Argentinos. We use them for feral hogs, which us living in South Texas, it's a pretty common game species here for us to hunt. We both have a joy with working dogs, have a background in working dogs, and just really enjoy using this breed to hunt with, and have seen a lot of growth and maturity through our dogs. We've learned a lot through this, and it's just been a wonderful experience. We enjoy sharing our what we've learned with others in the breed, and it seems like now there's a lot more of a Dogo Argentino hunting community that's now coming in and becoming more well known within the hunting community.
And if people don't realize, we did an interview a few years back. I think it's episode 61. So please check that out if you haven't. And
yeah, that seemed to be about 3 years ago.
3 years.
Was when we did that interview. We went back and looked at it, and congrats to you for keeping the podcast going for that long as well. But yeah, we were surprised. It just seems a lot longer for some reason.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of growth in the 3-year period.
It's
to kind of go back and see where we were at that time, and almost like how much more optimistic and positive we were in some aspects, and things that worked out different ways. But it was neat to kind of revisit that this week.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's been going on since, and how's your program developed, and how.
Yeah, so I guess about 3 years ago, it's 2020. When we talked to you, we had a new litter on the ground that we were just raising and about to start, and that was a really big project for us. That was a really big step for us. We have a male Dogo named Buzzy, and that was some really nice pups out of him. We were hunting like crazy that year.
Yeah, that was three years ago. It was very much like first generation and just the start of second generation kind of Deguello Dogos that we were starting to get into. And like right now in the whelping box, we've got our first 4th generation Deguello Dogo litter. So growth as far as with our own dogs in a certain direction we them go in, kind of starting to see a little bit more of a physical type guard. They start to kind of look the same. We're kind of seeing the progress that we were hoping we would at this point. But just started the 3rd generation here this last year. Been seeing some really promising things there, and just kind of still working on developing what I guess would later on be called our line.
Right.
Don't have something yet that we think is a dialed in type, but we're getting a lot closer.
Mm-hmm. So tell me some of the things that you guys learned, and some of the things that you wish you knew before.
Well, I mean, as far as like things we've learned, we talked a lot in the podcast about, and I guess too, to hunt with just this breed of dog, it's a very specific role that they play. It's a very, I mean, we know what we're looking for when we go out there and hunt these dogs, and that really hasn't changed from day one. I mean, we're really wanting dogs that are gonna kind of beat the brush, look for sign. If you put them somewhere where hogs are close by, they're going to work tracks like any other hunting breed would until they find what they're looking for. So.
Oh, and like Andrew said, we've learned our line inside and out. Now that we're, like you said, the pups in the whelping box are 3rd generation to 4th generation, we have raised and hunted multiple dogs in a pedigree. So I feel like we are learning even down to the type that's in our blood, and then what type is thrown with each breeding. And also, like you mentioned, we've always been looking for the package deal, but I think as far as the training, we've learned they are who they are from the start. You can always pull a little bit more out of a Dogo, but their personality usually stays about the same from a young pup, which would show 3 to 5 months, I think.
Yeah, we maybe not so much things that we've learned that we didn't know at the start, but something that kind of seems to be a recurring theme. And like Ashley said, there have been prospects that we've started that we've been able to get a little bit more out of them if we put in extra time and work and really focus on them. But for the most part, the ones that you see at a very young age that you think are going to, go on to contribute and really might be something special, those are the ones that kind of carry through. And the ones that you've kind of been on the fence about from the beginning, they seldom seem to do as good as some of the other ones.
And I'm sure that's a lesson that comes with time. Just how you want things to be natural in your breedings and in your genetics. And if you truly want to know what the blood is on your yard, you want them to naturally be easy starters. And as far as the Dogo breed as a whole, we're aiming for naturally easy starters.
When we did the first podcast back in 2020, we were probably on Dogo number 10, maybe 12, as far as dogs that we've raised and started in the woods. And I'd say now we're probably closing in on 30. So just that extra amount of reps and seeing, that many more Dogos start out from the beginning, you kind of get a better idea. And maybe that's what it is too. Maybe we just have a better eye now and we can kind of see from a younger age which ones we think are going to work out.
Mm-hmm. What was it? Again, this is kind of like a rehash, but I think people still like to hear is what was the deciding factor for you guys to go all in on the Dogo Argentino and what qualities do they bring to the table, especially when they're, hunting?
Well, like Andrew said, we both come from a working dog, loving the working dog background. His family's heavy into the coonhounds. My family was heavy into the military dog training programs. We lived together. He had a really good batch of hog dogs going. We tried to build that back up. We spoke about, if we're going to get back into dogs, we really wanted a direction and a goal in mind. And we had a half Dogo at the time. We did a lot of research, and some of the good qualities that we liked is that they worked. When we first started, we had a hodgepodge of a pack, including Catahoulas and cur dogs and all of the mixes, maybe a little bit leftovers from your high school days. But the qualities, they work well for the pastures that we're in, as far as that short to medium range, catch them right when they strike them, not going to get into a race and go for miles. That was one of the biggest qualities, so we could hunt locally. Others?
Yeah, that for sure. That the Dogo itself had some breed characteristics that we wanted to focus on and thought that would be a good fit. But like Ashley was saying, we didn't want a hodgepodge of dogs. We wanted one type, one direction. We knew where we were going. When I first started hog dogging, around 12 or 13, and I would hunt with anybody that would take me. And there was a police officer that was he was like 20, 25 years older than I was, but he was also kind of new to hog dogging. And we were both kind of starting out at around the same, level of beginner. And I was buying dogs from him. Sometimes he would buy dogs from me. Again, like Ashley was saying, that hodgepodge of dogs, I had different types of breeds, different crosses. So did he. And, you just kind of get in this cycle where for like a year or two, you don't really see any growth. You're just kind of moving around, utility players from one yard to another. You're always looking for something that you can get that's ready to go right now. And it's just a kind of a cycle. And he broke that cycle for him by deciding that he was just going to go with one breed. And that was the Kimmer cur, which would mountain cur, that type of dog. But he committed himself to that, and just watching in just how fast of amount of time he progressed, because he set this, set of guidelines that he was going to go by. And, he could use whatever dog he wanted as long as it was a Kimmer cur, and, he liked how it looked or whatever, but he had those parameters, and it just seemed like that helped out a lot more as far as elevating his program. And that just kind of was a lesson that always stuck with me. And, Ashley and I, we talked about it, and it just seemed like whatever we did, we wanted one breed of dog, a breed of dog that could do it all by themselves. We didn't want to have to, haul around something else. And it just, the Dogo works for us. Like she was saying, for our pastures and for where we live, it's a really logical fit. And I think too, like when we talked in 2020, it was very much, could this be done? Does it work? And we were, trying to show people in the hunting community that, yes, it makes sense. But, since then, it's just like, well, how much more can you elevate it and make a much better pack of dogs? And, I mean, there's other people now that are doing this with just Dogos. And I mean, there's some really phenomenal dogs out there within the breed that are hog dogging. So, I mean, it's cool to see that. It's great to see that there's some growth there in the talent level. You know, there's not a whole lot of pure breeds of dogs right now that, you know, can say that they're improving. And that might not be on the whole, or, you know, it might just be certain dogs that are given the opportunity, but there are better working Dogos and more of them now than I would say there was, you know, 10 years ago, or even, you know, at the time we did the podcast.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk about some of the hunting that they do in their native land of Argentina? What's the difference between here and there?
Well, taking a trip to Argentina is definitely on the bucket list. We've been hunting all over Texas, and we've known people that have taken trips to Argentina. And of course, we, you know, definitely consume all the footage of them on social media over there. But it looks like wide open areas, some mountain ranges, but they're designed to have stamina, to have agility, to be able to have a big enough gas tank to, you know, work on the ground, have somewhat of a good nose, a sharp sense of smell. But I think they use them similar to us, but maybe not so much. They have a few other maybe Dogo crosses or sight hound types with the speed being out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
The Dogal is very common down there, which that's like a stag hound Dogo cross. And, you know, you'll see these pictures where there'll be 3 or 4 of those cross type dogs in the back of a truck and 2 or 3 pure Dogos with them. Or, you know, sometimes you'll see as many as 4 or 5 Dogos on the ground down there and a couple crosses. But one thing I do want to say about Argentina and what they do down there with their dogs, you know, there's kind of this stigma about the Dogo, about being this kind of lazy, kind of couch potato, soft breed. And absolutely none of that comes from the original breeders down there in Argentina. I mean, Argentina, they still very much believe in the rustic one type Dogo, you know, like he is a ranch or farm type dog. He lives outside, you know, your children should be able to love on him, and they act, you know, as perfectly as they can. Just great temperament.
Yes, the temperament is something that we noticed as well. And it's very important to us to be able to work as a pack. And you can see that as well in Argentina, where they have multiple males, females, mixed different breeds, all in, you know, loose in the back of a truck or in the yard with family. And that's another good quality of the Dogo that we read about and that we had seen from a handful of Dogos that also got us into this breed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're very rustic, but very like farm family oriented type dogs, you know, that can work around livestock and other animals and be fine. I do want to say, though, while we're talking about Argentina, something that we've learned in the last 3 years, which, I mean, we always knew there was a European Dogo community, but just we maybe have been more exposed here recently to the quality of what's over there. I mean, there are some really excellent Dogos, I mean, in all parts of the globe, but there's places, you know, especially in Eastern Europe where there are some really great Dogo breeders that are producing an excellent specimen of what the Dogo breed should be. And they deserve to be recognized for that, especially with, you know, it's the hunting laws in that part of the world are a lot more strenuous than they are, you know, here in Argentina. So, I mean, the extra steps that they have to go through to, you know, make sure that these are still working dogs is a lot higher. And you know, I applaud them for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So talk about your program. How has it changed the last 3 years as far as what you're looking for is a physical type, or has it just solidified your opinion?
I don't think we really kind of look for anything as far as physically with the dogs. We just are watching them, observing and seeing what's working and what's not. We don't really make decisions based on looks as much as it is about performance, but you definitely see a certain type of dog or a certain build that you know, works better than others. Us being here in South Texas, you know, it seems like if you look at the dogs, the Dogo Argentinos that are doing well in AKC shows, you know, you can almost put the breed into 2, you know, categories. And there's that really heavy Molosser type, just super heavy bone, super solid, you know, Molosser type dog that's usually what's doing well at these AKC shows. But a dog like that, you know, in South Texas or in most places where you would hunt hogs, it's just not going to hold up. So you're also seeing more of these athletic, you know, working type Dogos. and the contrast between the breed, you know, as far as which lines are producing which, or, you know, who's turning out which type of dogs. I mean, it's almost like two different classes. But I mean, we're definitely looking for a dog that's athletic, able to run.
Something that we've maybe learned, the Dogo Argentino standard is very strict. It does have a very strict set of guidelines. And maybe not, we're always looking for balance and type, maybe over the specifics as far as the weight numbers, the height numbers, things like that. We always are looking, you know, type first. You know, if you see a dog with great type, and then balance. Yes, we've had dogs short, high, and we've learned from those. You always want to get them as close to perfect as you can. But I would say that we always, something that we've learned through the years, instead of being so specific on the numbers, is the structure, overall balance, and the type of the dog. And of course, you know, something else is very important to us is always their head to be able to do the work.
And what is it about the head?
The head is definitely a stamp of the breed. You can get with the molosser types, you can get in trouble with the short muzzles. Then you know that the dog gets into trouble in the woods with breathing, stamina, things like that. You don't. It's just it is a stamp of the breed. You want balance is probably the best definition for the standard itself. You want a 1-to-1 ratio, things like that, and then follow into the balance of the structure.
Yeah, the bite's really important, especially how the lips line up whenever the dog is bit down on the hog. I mean, sometimes it's as long as, you know, 10 minutes or even more, that dog's going to have to hold that hog, and the ability to be able to breathe through its mouth while it's still caught is very important. So
you just want to pay attention to the head, that you're not getting too far away from what was intended, the intended purpose.
The amount of the standard that's written about the head for the Dogo Argentino, I think it's like 40% of what the dog is scored on in a show is just the head. Mm-hmm. It's a real big deal within the Dogo breed.
So when you have a litter and you're gonna pick a couple, 1 or 2 puppies to keep, what are you looking for in that first 8 to 10 to 12 weeks?
I mean, it's for one, I mean, we're looking for a confident, healthy, athletic pup. But when we say confident, something that we've learned is that it doesn't necessarily mean your most fired up, amped up pup. You know, sometimes that can even be more of a sign of that's a pup that doesn't feel too safe in its own skin, that it has to act that way. Some of the most laid back puppies we've had have turned out to be some of our best dogs. So, I mean, really the main thing is more about the physical looks than it is anything that the dog does temperament wise. And the ones that we think are going to grow up to have a certain look to them, that kind of athletic, well-balanced design that, you know, can really put some miles down, that's going to be the type that we're going to look at maybe keeping. I mean, the last couple litters we've had, there hasn't been a real wide swing as far as from what we would say is, you know, the worst couple puppies in the litter to some of the ones that we were more excited about. I mean, they've been pretty uniform litters. So, I mean, it even gets down to like personal thing. A lot of the time it's just, what do we need as far as, you know, like right now with this current litter, we're really looking to keep males. That's what we're wanting. So, I mean, the males that are in this litter will probably be more prone to keep those, but, you know, physically it's just, do they look like they're healthy puppies that are going to be able to have what they need to do this? And if so, then we just kind of start nitpicking from there.
Right.
And so when you do have this puppy, what are some of the things that you do to get them acclimated to the hunting world, and what sort of imprinting tools that you use to ensure a good start at least?
Well, again, hunting as a pack and the temperament of our yard being, you know, everybody's kind of on the same wavelength, being a purebred dog. We really like them to grow up within the pack. We let them run around the yard, meet some of the big dogs, things like that. But around 6 months, we'll start taking them on what we call field trips, little day trips to run around the woods a little bit, cross fences, ride in the truck, in the box, collar up, things like that. 8 to 10 months, we start taking them, you know, we'll plug them in with an older dog, start showing them the woods. And then around the year-old mark, we like to see them actively at least have some hustle to participate.
Everything's really natural. Nothing's ever really forced. We kind of want them to progress at their own pace. One thing, and like with a litter, like for right now, we've got 2 pups that are 5 months old that are litter mates. And then, like I say, we have this young litter now. And in both these instances, what we'll probably do, and what we've learned, from past mistakes, when you're starting a group of pups, we'll start one, take it, multiple times. And once we feel like that pup is at a really good point and has retained some of this, and we feel like we can plug them back in later on and they'll be able to contribute, then we'll put that one up and we'll start another one. We've learned in the past that, when you're trying to start, multiple pups at the same time, or you're kind of flip flopping, you'll take one night and another one the next. It's just not, it doesn't work out as well. So, we'll focus on whichever pup seems the most mature and ready to go at that time. That's the one we'll start first. And there's no pressure. There's nothing expected of them in the early days. We're just gauging how they're going to participate. And the ones that want to participate more, get more reps. And then once we feel like they're in a good spot, we'll put them up and start another one and just see where they're at. But it's always, one student at a time is kind of what we've learned. Well, I mean, right now we have more males that are hunting than we do females. But as far as like type and everything, I mean, I would say that the best dog right now, as of what we have on our yard, is a female, for sure. And I think too, with males, you get to a certain point where around that 4-year, 5-year mark where they kind of start to get a little heavy. If they've made it that long, we haven't had a whole lot of males make it that far into the program. But with females, it seems like there's a lot more longevity there. We've had a good handful of females make it past 5 years old that are still hunting, still contributing, and that's just they're just more athletic in their design. I mean, and a well-bred Dogo female, that's physically, I mean, you couldn't almost design a better hunting dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And things with females, it seems like they start a little bit easier. Maybe they're a little bit smarter with things like loading up and, breaking off a livestock. That's really easy. But yes, when you have a good Dogo female, which it seems like it might be hard to find, you have to go through a lot of them to get the whole package of a good Dogo female. But that is probably, it's very much like hunting a lioness is kind of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 1, how we hunt. 2, we are big on, the whole package. So they're putting in the work. They are under pressure. And it's consistency as well for us. It's on a consistent basis. And so at a point in time, there are, it's miles on a dog, but it's some hard miles.
It seems like, and, you can go 50 hogs, maybe even 100 hogs, before you come across one that's, typically what would be considered a bad boar. And it takes a really special kind of dog to get past those first handful of bad boars, which, we do expect these dogs that they're hunting on the ground. If they come across a bad hog by themselves, even though they're alone, they should still engage and hopefully the other dogs or ourselves get there as soon as possible. And it just seems like, we've had some young males that, that benchmark of those first couple of really, tough boar hogs have kind of set us back. Whereas it seems like with the females, they've done well with that. So that's kind of been another thing as well, is their livability seems a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like upland bird hunting or like hunting beagles on rabbits, without, of course, the open mouthness, but just that we just like when we talked about in 2020, we're still very much predominantly hunting on foot. We hardly ever rode dogs. If we do, it's for special occasions for certain places, but for the most part, we're always on foot. We expect the dogs to cast out. We don't want them to be underfoot the whole time. We don't want to have to find a trail for them and turn them loose on it. They need to actively search. As far as casting, it really depends on the sign, the time of day, the amount of scent that's on the ground, how many hogs are in the area.
How fresh the dog is.
Exactly, how fresh the dog is. I mean, we've had dogs that we've taken them to places where as soon as from the time we've turned out to the time we picked them up, they're closer to 1,000 yards than they are to us. And We've had places where, I mean, the dogs are less than 100 yards from you. They're hunting, but there's just not a whole lot for them to go off of. But we do expect them to be able to, you know, trail, track, use the wind. You know, they can't be one specific type of scent dog. They really need to utilize their nose, which that's something else that we've learned within the breed. And I mean, from the start, we've noticed it, but just it never kind of ceases to impress us, like how well they do use their nose. The Dogo Argentino isn't really known as a tracker. You know, that's not their strong point. They're a combat dog, but we've from what we've seen, and not just our line, from dogs that have been given to us from other people, and just the Dogo Argentino in general, they have the ability to hunt and to find game, and that's something that we've been really impressed with.
We like to say that if you can get these Dogos within like 500 yards of a hog, they're going to take a track and they're going to catch it as soon as they make contact with that dog or with that hog. And as far as their noses, yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like if you can build on that, if you can get them to start using it and build on that, they will actively use their noses. Some better than others. Some will put their noses to the ground. Most of them all wind, but they have decent noses that can connect with a hog.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of learned too what to watch for and like what areas, you know, if we see them take a trail and the way they act, their body language, we kind of have an idea of how they're looking and what are the odds of us finding a hog based on how they're hunting.
Andrew's saying that it's like hunting bird dogs. Pointer is one of the breeds to create the Dogos. So it is they do little loops around us. Sometimes they'll, you know, buddy up. Sometimes they're solo in all different directions, but they're doing little loops looking for hot sign, fresh sign from hogs to take a track to catch them on the other end.
So we're walking at a pretty good click usually when we're going. I mean, it's not a slow, you know, deal. We're putting some miles down pretty. Yeah, it's a hike. But what we're looking for as far as what I'm seeing on the Garmin is, for every hour that we're out there hunting, I'm expecting at least 5 to 7 miles per dog for them to be actively searching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in the wintertime, we've had as many, you know, 12 miles within an hour or so. If we're really, you know, in a place that's full of hot sign and we're getting on hogs, but I mean, I'm expecting at least that for an hour to 2 hours, they really need to cover some ground and actively search. And like I say, it's not based on how far away they are from me. They can be within 100 yards from me, but I need to see them covering as much ground as possible, you know, looking for hogs. And then if we get on something that they can take further, that they do that.
Well, I guess my favorite time of year would be that February, maybe, you know, January to March time, right after deer season's ended. It's still cool outside. You can hunt all day if you wanted. That's definitely my favorite time of year.
Yeah. So like a goal for us, and it's been a goal for us from the beginning, is we want to catch, we want to average 52 hogs a year. We want to catch at least 52 hogs a year so we can say we've averaged a hog a week. And we hunt year round. There's never a time of year that we just say we're not going to hunt anymore. Like Ashley was saying, though, that January, February, March, we try to have over half the hogs that we're going to catch for the year caught in those first 3 to 4 months. April, really good to us too. So after April, you start getting into May. May can be kind of a wild card month if it's a wet May and everybody's planting and you know, hogs are active. You can have a big month. If it's a hot, dry May, you know, it might not be so great. But June, July, and August are killers. It's 104 right now with a heat index of 112. This is like the 30th day in a row we've been over 100 degrees. I mean, it's just brutal. We're still hunting. We went this morning. We caught a hog last Sunday morning. I mean, we're still hunting year round.
Conditions are tough, and you have to keep your dogs watered. And you have to make sure that they're getting plenty of rest on your off days. But you can still, you know, work a Dogo and catch a hog.
Yeah.
It's just tough.
And then you kind of get out of August. September kind of starts getting better. Usually the first half of September is pretty rough too. But then you have September and then October, which October's always been a big month for us. But at the same time, with October ending, deer season starts up here, and deer season in South Texas is I mean,
if we were to have a slow season, it would be around deer season, just because we're going to let the deer hunters do their thing for a while. And then we slowly start making our way back. But we do have a few places that we can hit up at night. just to get
Yeah.
the dogs out to stretch them out.
And what time of day is the best, you guys say?
Well, I mean, it depends. There's a lot of variables that go into that. Right now, I mean, we're hunting anywhere from 4 in the morning to like 7 in the morning because that's the only time you can really get below 90 degrees. I mean, we've done some night hunts in the last month or so, but
even when it starts getting dark at like 6, I'll go hunting at 4, just to see if the hogs are moving.
Right. The heat index right now, even at like 10 o'clock at night, is still in the high 90s. It's real. You've really got to wait for that morning for that everything to break up. But yeah, and when it gets cooler, like she was saying, January through March, I mean, you can really, 4 or 5 in the afternoon, if it's under 70 degrees or so, you can get after it and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so whatever, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, we got a random rain shower, so it wasn't 100 degrees. We thought maybe it had rained at a place, but it was so spotty. But conditions like that, if the ground is wet, that'll help a whole lot. But the sun just burns up any scent that was out there, so it's tough. But we hunt year round just to also see what kind of dogs we have. You'll make a dog hunting them in the summer.
Yeah.
You guys have like a club or just a loose group of people that you go hunting with, or is it just you two? Or
I would say 98% of the time it's Ashley and us.
Yeah.
There's a landowner that's been awesome. He's been a big part of our program and getting us onto places. He'll go with us, maybe a quarter of the time. And there's kind of some new people, some younger people that have been wanting to go with us. So we go with them. But I mean, as far as like with dogs and everything, it's just ours. And like I say, most of the time it's me and Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a lot of people in the Dogo breed. We've kind of told people the ones that were interested. We've had people just kind of randomly message us that we've known from somewhere and asking if we would take them hunting. And we love to show these dogs work because we put a lot of time into this and we're proud of how they do. And then also, it's we enjoy educating people on the breed. We really don't typically hunt with other people's dogs much anymore, just because, we've gotten into such a good routine and it's just so easy to load up our own. And plus we have so many now that we really can't afford to leave somebody at home so somebody else's dogs can hunt.
And I think it's a personal thing. Now, I mean, we've been in this for 9 years. You said we've been hunting Dogos for 6 years. So it's our personal project. We want to take our dogs hunting. If we go with someone else's dogs, that's a dog that doesn't get to go. That's my dog. So it's a little personal.
But we've had lots of landowners go with us. We've
taken friends.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone with other people. It just I enjoy it more when it's just me and her. And I don't know. It just seems like we're able to. We can evaluate the dogs more. We're not worried about the third party or like making sure that whoever's with us is having a good time. This is us focused on our dogs and seeing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do this unless we have permission on these places from landowners. So we always, you always kind of just want to keep it straight with your landowners. You don't want to have a bunch of people, things like that. But we've taken all kinds of people and other Dogos, and we've met all kinds of people from across the world that we've become great friends with. We've had quite a network through the Dogos.
Yeah. And in March, we, in 1 week, we took some people from California hunting and got on 2 massive boar hogs. And then a couple days later, we took a married couple that are very big into the Dogo breed that are from Hungary, and we got them on a couple good hogs. So we have those times where like when everything's great and we've got people that are wanting to where we can take people and show them. But
majority of the time, it's just me and him walking around the woods, and sometimes we bump a hog. That's the part that everybody wants to go hunting with you, but the part that sucks is the walking around with the dry run.
There's not a whole lot of people that after 1 or 2 of those dry runs are wanting to go a third or fourth
they're like,
time.
never mind.
Yeah. I think they think that there's some kind of like backstage deal that they don't know about, but then when they see how we do it, they're not as interested.
Yeah, for sure. It takes a hardy soul to do some stuff like that.
But you learn so much about your dogs being on the ground with them, and then especially like I mentioned, the pedigree, having raised and hunted multiple dogs in the pedigree and then raising their offspring and their offspring. You learn so much by just watching how they naturally start in the woods, being on the ground with them, what they're doing, what they're not doing, how they move is a huge part of it, stuff like that.
What are some of the things that you guys do to keep your dogs fit when you're not hunting?
Well, I mean, really, that's kind of the benefit of hunting year round is that you don't really have to do a whole lot of if you're doing this. I mean, like we talked about, when we go, it's usually for about an hour or two. When it's a little bit cooler, we'll maybe go to 2 or 3 places instead of just one.
But there's times we're going every other day. Right before it started warming up, I guess it would be May. I was trying to soak it in. I was going every other day there for a couple of weeks in a row. And when the dogs are in their areas, that's when they're off technically. And we want them to be able to rest and recuperate and just, so we don't do a whole lot, I guess, besides the hunting, but we do have a fenced in area that will let them off and run around, play a little bit, things like that. Walks here and there, just around the place, things like that. But a lot of it is mainly getting out there hunting, putting in the miles.
They, from what we've seen, they need about a mile a day. So if you're taking them hunting, a couple times a week, and they're hitting 4 miles each time you take them, and they're at that 8 mile mark or so for the week, then they're usually pretty good. Or if you take them on one big hunt and you get 7 or 8 miles out of them in one night, they're usually pretty well rested until the next time you go in a week or so. So
I will say that we do make it a point to spend time with them. Maybe it's not a workout routine, things like that, but we do spend time with them multiple times a day, interaction, a little bit of affection. I mean, you still build that bond with your pack. And like I said about raising young dogs on the ground, going up in and out with the adult dogs, they learn who's a little bit more friendly, who's a little bit more grumpy. It's very much raising a pack or a pride of Dogos. Now it's all kind of intertwined. It's one big family. So we definitely make it a point to spend time with them every day, just as family members.
Yeah, that's a good. The bonding's every day, but physical conditioning, that's strictly something that we try to do in the woods. And then as soon as we see that they're hitting that mark to where they're starting to get fatigued, we give them up and put them for rest.
Mm-hmm.
How many dogs do you usually run on a typical hunt?
We've run as many as 5, as far as more than once. I'm sure there's maybe been a time or two where we've had a couple young dogs and had 6 on the ground, but 5 for us is a lot.
5 is probably max.
4 is, I mean, if we're hunting a place where we really know that's got a good hog population and we're trying to get multiple catches, the dream is turn loose 4 Dogos or 3 Dogos, and if you get on a group of hogs, each one catches their own, and we've done that a couple times, but I think 3 is kind of a really nice number.
I think 3 is ideal, and then we like to plug in whatever young dog that we're starting at that time.
Right.
But 3 adult Dogos that are the entire package that can find and catch a hog, that's a really good group of dogs. And you can put down multiple hogs or a good size hog with 3 good Dogos. But we've had 4 if we're going to hit multiple places.
Yeah.
And so when a Dogo catches a hog, what's the difference between, say, them and a pit bull or an American bulldog? What gives you that extra oomph with them? Just their size, their strength, or?
Well, the extra oomph, I think, if you're going to compare it to the American bulldog and the pit bull, the extra oomph is everything before that. Mm-hmm. The hunting, the finding the hog, the grabbing it. I mean, all 3 are excellent holding type dogs. I think as far as when you're looking at the breed as a whole, and when you're looking at how many of them are geared for that type of job, I think the pit bull maybe has a higher percentage of dogs that are going to work for that. If you're the type of hunter that you're using other style dogs to find the hog, to corner the hog, what they call bay dogs, basically, that'll bark and stop a hog long enough for you to get there with a pit bull and turn it loose and catch it that way. But and same thing with the American bulldog. There's not a whole lot of people that are running American bulldogs on the ground. With pit bulls, I mean, not that you couldn't, you very easily could. I think, one, there's a stigma. A lot of these farmers that we talk to and explain what we do, I think if we would have told them, at the start that I'm going to go to your place and turn loose 3 or 4 pit bulls, they probably would have been a little bit more hesitant, because the Dogo Argentino, I mean, it's gaining popularity, but still not that well known, especially in our area from landowners. So there's a little bit more of a discussion there, and you can tell them, no, these aren't pit bull type dogs. These have a little bit more of a brain to them, and you know, they're a little bit more easy to break off of livestock and things like that. Which all of our dogs that we have on the ground in the woods, they all have a shock collar on them that we can utilize at any time, you know, just in case. But I think as far as, you know, separating the Dogo from those two breeds, you know, one, it's going to be a little bit more intelligent as on the average, as far as like being easy to break off of livestock, issues with other dogs, things like that. We seem to have better luck with the Dogo than we would with those other two breeds. But I think too, just when it comes to holding, as far as if you wanted to give something physically to the Dogo is a little bit taller at the point of its shoulder than most pits. Weight wise, yes, they probably are going to weigh more than what is a real American pit bull. But it's everything that makes it a great hunting dog, along with having the ability to hold a big hog. Those combinations for us is what puts it ahead of the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Being on a big hog with 3 Dogos, I think, is maybe more controlled with their strength and their height than being on a big hog with just 3 pit bulls. Not maybe so much, you know, we're not talking regripping or the catching part, but the solid hold, the control of that situation, I would hand it to the Dogo. And again, with Andrew, everything before that stamina, he had described it a couple weeks ago of the pit bull being a gladiator type style, you know, strong hit, a fight, you know, and then the Dogo being more of a soldier, you know, marching place to place, looking for your enemy, and then having to battle.
Yeah, it's, you know, that gladiator, that's exactly right. That gladiator kind of short burst of energy, combat oriented dog for a very small amount of time, whereas compared to a Dogo that, you know, search for the enemy, have to march for a long time, and then after that still have the ability to do combat.
Along with the shock collar, the collars also have GPS, and then we have a handheld system that'll show how far and in what direction each dog is. So that's a big one as well. The GPS collars. All the dogs wear a protective cut collar that's made out of Kevlar that goes around their necks. And then the GPS collars, and you know, the medical, we'll always carry a medical pack with us, and then just your gear.
Yeah,
as far as leashes, headlamps, things like that.
Yeah, we are very I guess almost you could say minimalist would be the word when it comes to like what we take with us. Like, we're really, there's no 4-wheeler packed down with stuff. There's no side by side. I mean, it's what we can carry on foot and still be comfortable to walk, you know, 5 or 6 miles if we have to. I think in relation to the Dogo, you know, like we talked about, rest is a very important thing, and we're watching for fatigue more than anything. When it kind of comes to just being out there with the dogs in general, you know, every place that we hunt, and every place that we'll probably ever pick up will either have cows or the neighboring place will have cows. These dogs off of livestock, or having them trained to where they can work around livestock, is, you know, before we even really start focusing on a young dog, that point has to be driven across, that they don't, when we hunt with our older dogs after they've been started for a while, I mean, it's like they don't even see cows. It's like cows are invisible to them. They just don't pay attention to them. And you've got to have that to hunt in this part of Texas. I think as far as, like I said, in relation to the dog, you know, besides fatigue, there's times where dogs get hurt or there's injuries. I mean, of course, you're hunting a wild boar that can weigh up to 300 pounds and has teeth and knows how to use them. What I tell people when we're asked about, you know, anything as far as vet care, the biggest thing I can give advice on is, if you don't feel comfortable with it, don't do it. You know, I think a lot of times, and not just in the Dogo breed, but in hunting dogs in general, I think dogs get put in a situation to where their owner makes something worse. Whereas if they just either sought professional help or just kind of took a second to think about what they were doing before they did it, you know, it would probably avoid some problems down the road. So, I mean, just, you know, don't ever force anything. And if you don't feel comfortable with what you're doing, you know, get somebody who can do it for you, or seek medical attention, but don't force yourself to do something thinking you're going to save a dog when you might not necessarily have to.
How important is it to have a vet that's kind of understanding and understands the hunting culture.
We are lucky enough that our vet is from the area and knows what we do and has met a bunch of our dogos. So that is huge. I know that they're becoming harder and harder to find. And things are becoming harder and harder to get your hands on as far as medications and antibiotics and things like that. I would say, any advice to someone is to try to get you a business owner that has his own business, maybe instead of one of the corporate umbrella vet clinics, or a farm ranch type place. I'm sure you could go to your local feed store to maybe find a network of people like that. But it is important, and it is definitely a plus in your program if you can find somebody that understands the working dog and understands even hunting feral hogs.
I do want to say, while we're on the subject though, and again, from years of experience of hunting with other breeds of dogs and crosses and just many different scenarios, the Dogo Argentino, one of the reasons that we've had the success we have is that they don't treat feral hogs like adversaries. It's very much predator type hunting. I don't want a dog to fight a hog. I want a dog to catch a hog. I'm not looking to wrestle with a 250-pound boar hog. I want my dogs to be in control. And and it's easily noted if you follow our Instagram or you see like our pictures and videos, you'll notice that, like Ashley said, we run a Kevlar, collar on the neck, and that's really it. And a big reason of that is because where we are and the heat, and you can't really run a full body vest. They make protective vests for dogs, that especially for hog hunting dogs, of all different, however much cover you want to put on that dog. I mean, there's equipment now that it's basically something would have to go majorly wrong for a dog to get hurt if you're using the right type of equipment. But those are the type of dogs that, like Ashley was talking about, the gladiator type dogs that are turned loose on hogs that are already stopped. For our dogs to be actively searching and hunting, they can't have that much protective equipment on. It's just the heat is too much for them, and the fatigue will get to them. So we really don't run a whole lot of cut vests, but at the same time, that extra mobility and the athleticism that naturally comes with a well-bred dogo, I mean, we really, knock on wood, have been very fortunate with how small the number of dogs we've had get hurt is when you consider how many good hogs that we've been on. And I mean, we're very fortunate in that aspect, but I think a lot of it too is that the dogo doesn't approach a hog like an adversary. It's very much something that is their prey and that they're trying to stop.
We never want to see a dog get hurt, but I will say that learning from a bump or a poke here and there at a young age when they're starting out, they really develop a sense of style to control the head. You control the hog, get on the side of the hog, you get less injuries, things like that. So they develop a sense of body style. They learn how to move with the hog instead of against the hog. Things like that do come with the mobility and having a bruise here or there. Yes.
Yeah, and bred right's the key word,
right
because I mean, you can
have a dogo catch anything that you put in front of it, but if it physically cannot withstand, it does not have a good balance of structure, it will not hold up from even finding a hog or even being quick enough to catch up to a hog if it did find it. Balance in the structure and physically, it matters.
Well, they just don't seem to cross that wall.
Yeah.
I've hunted with a lot of pits, not a whole lot of American bulldogs. I've seen one or two. I've owned a lot of mixed American bulldogs crossed with other hunting dogs, and some of those were really awesome dogs. But with some of the purebred American bulldogs I've seen, and with a lot of the pit bulls I've seen, they kind of cross that wall in the moment to where they're not aware of anything else that's going on. They don't see the big picture. They're just very much focused in that one instant on what they're doing, which is great if that's what you're wanting them for. If you've got 4 or 5 other type of dogs that are in that situation and you want that dog to just pinpoint focus on holding that hog and whatever else is going around, if that dog's injured or anything like that, they're just totally tuned out to that. That's fine. I especially if you're hunting with 2 or 3 big athletic dogos, you shouldn't need them to go to that point. I want them to still stay grounded, to kind of recognize where they're at, what's going on around them, to have a little bit of awareness to the situation. And I think sometimes you lose that with, especially with really kind of game driven type pit bulls that are just totally, eyes rolled back, not at all, you don't even know if you could say what they are as conscious. They're just totally locked in on their bite and just trying to hold on as much as they can, and not really focused on whatever the kind of dog that you're going to spend 5 or 10 minutes getting them off that hog after that hog's dead. And I mean, I can appreciate that. I know there's a lot of hunters out there that want that type of dog. For me, I really want a dog that's more grounded and more aware of what I'm doing and what it can do to help me and the other dogs.
And that awareness carries over into everything with the pack mentality. Before that hog, after that hog, that cuts down on the growling in the box, the dog fights around dead hogs. It just seems like that awareness is there from the beginning to the end, that we're, as a pack, finding and catching these hogs. We're not fighting these hogs. We're not fighting amongst ourselves. That's something that the Dogo, that awareness does help them in that aspect.
Things that we learned that were kind of a surprise, I think there's other purebred dogs that aren't even, in that Molosser or Mastiff or Bulldog type breed, that if we were trying to use those pure breeds, we would have more issues with, like Ashley saying, with dog fighting and stuff. I think there's hound breeds out there that if we just hunted red bone coon hounds and that's all we hunted hogs with, we would have more issues trying to hunt 2 or 3 males together than we would hunting 2 or 3 Dogos. I mean, they're just very kind of, once you get them into a system, they kind of very, I don't know if intelligence is the right word, but they kind of buy in, and you just get them into a routine. There's not a lot of the BS that you'd have with other breeds or mixes. Well, I mean, we've been really go ahead.
No, I was just, first, you always want to breed with a purpose. You always want to have some kind of purpose in mind, and then you want 2 healthy dogs. That's your starting point. You go ahead.
No, yeah, and I mean, we breed for self-use. We don't breed to sell pups. We don't advertise pups. If we have a litter, we're going to pull what we need. And then if there's 1 or 2 that we think would be a good working prospect, we'll try to put them in good working homes. But we don't breed just to breed. It's always for what we're needing at that time. And if we're breeding for what we're needing, then we're probably just going to breed the best dogs that we have on hand. It's not so much of like a, scientist in a lab, this dog has this dog has this, and we're trying to balance that out. It's very much more like, this is an excellent performing dog that's doing everything that we're needing. This is an excellent performing female that's also a wonderful hunter. Let's breed them together, and hopefully we get some great hunters out of that. And that's more of, it's really just kind of breed best to best. We don't really breed off of our yard because, one, we really haven't had to for the last couple of years. Maybe that might change down the road. But, when you're breeding for self-use and you're using your own dogs, I mean, you don't have to really overanalyze the why so much. And even then, I've always kind of gone to the thing where you can breed whatever you want to whatever. It's more of what you do with the product afterwards and how you work through that. That's important, because I mean, it is kind of a crapshoot. If it was as easy as breeding the best dogs to the best dogs,
we'd all be there.
We'd all be there already. Yeah.
How important is health testing to your program?
Well, I mean, I think these dogs, to live the life that they live, that's kind of the ultimate health test. If I'm asking you to put 5 to 10 miles down every week, even in the summertime, anything that's a flaw is going to show up. And we've had dogs that were given to us, and we've had dogs that were bred on this yard that have broken down on us, going through our a year of hunting hogs, like the way we do. It'll show up,
And of course, just big things as far as we pay attention to things like skin allergies, temperament's big. But yeah, I mean, if there's an issue as far as structure, it definitely shows itself. We've had a few dogs that have shown itself early.
Yeah, I mean,
and living that rustic lifestyle. If we've had some Dogos that kind of fall apart as far as that, living the rustic lifestyle, outdoors, hunting all the time, eating kibble. And then we've had some Dogos that have just been exceptionally healthy as far as thriving in that environment. And that's what we're looking for. This is a rustic working dog.
When we started this, that was a big part of what we wanted to do. we didn't want to get Dogos and then like have to cater to that breed as far as make things as easy as possible. When Ashley says rustic, I mean, our dogs live outside the whole year. I mean, there's, things like today where it's been 100 degrees. We'll bring some of our older dogs inside so they can rest and sleep in the AC during the heat of the day. But I mean, in the evenings, we'll put them back outside. During the morning and in early noon, they're outside on the yard. I mean, we want that capable rustic farm dog. We feed, mid-range kibble. We don't feed anything crazy. We don't supplement anything crazy. Fresh water and rest. That's a big part of it. But
shade, interaction.
Yeah, a lot of bonding and a lot of one-on-one time.
It makes them mentally better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right off the bat, I would say the hearing. That you need to have if you're getting a puppy from anybody, they should at very least be doing hearing tests. It is an all white breed. You do want to breed for things like pigmentation to help those things like the hearing, but hearing right off the bat. Then there's other things like the allergies, hip dysplasia. Mainly all the other things that plague all the other breeds, especially the large breeds. But hearing right off the bat, number one, at the very least, you need to be hearing testing your pups. I mean, like, again, there is a strict standard with the Dogo. You always want to compare your breeding stock to the standard. You want to get as near to perfect, but it is written in the Dogo standard, above all else, the dog needs to be courageous. So we'd look for that first.
Yeah, we're more focused on the woods type aspect of this breed. What we're looking for is not at all really necessarily what an AKC judge is going to look for in the show ring as far as what type of Dogo they're going to pick. Now, I mean, a balanced dog is a balanced dog. It doesn't matter how big a dog is or what it weighs or, its height in centimeters. None of that really matters as long as the dog's balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had, a pretty big window from the smallest dog we've had that's worked out and contributed to the biggest dog that we've worked out. I mean, you're probably looking at a 30 to maybe 40 pound swing and a possible, 4 to 5 inches in height difference, but like I say, if they're balanced, if they're athletic and they can perform, I mean, that's what we're looking for more so than having certain numbers of weights and heights in mind.
Well, that's kind of why I like to ask that question. I know it seems kind of weird when you're talking to a working dog program, but I kind of like to let people hear like how different it can be from what you see in a show ring and what is actually a functional working dog. And a lot of times, like let's look at your typical Labrador, a field lab to a show lab or a house lab, a pet lab is night and day. And there's other breeds that it's just like that as well. Your German Shepherd's you can visibly, and you can know nothing about dogs and you can visibly see the difference between a working line German Shepherd and a show line or a pet. And I think that's kind of like why I asked that question, so they can build that into people's minds. And I can visibly see the difference between a show or pet Dogo than say something on your yard. They're definitely more athletic. They have that more rustic look, and it just seems pretty obvious to me. And that's why I asked that question.
I do want to say though that within the Dogo show community, I mean, there's a lot of people that are very successful in the Dogo show community that don't work their Dogos, but at the same time acknowledge the people that do and acknowledge the need for that. There's people out there that are, going to Westminster and showing their Dogos, and they may not do any type of hunting, but they've, told us that they like our dogs, they like how our dogs look, and they're glad that we're, keeping that aspect of the breed alive. But, of course, like our main dog, Buzzsaw, if he was in a dog show, he would probably get laughed out of if people didn't know who he was, because of how small he is and just how different he looks than the show type Dogo. And that's exactly right what you're saying, as far as like you see these splits in these breeds between the show version and the working version. But I do want to say that the Dogo show community there's a lot of them that acknowledge that the hunting dogo is needed, and they're glad to see people, still doing that.
Yeah, I'm a 100% supporter of the show community, even though in some instances they're not necessarily doing right by the dogs, but that's everybody in every situation. Because I'm not a working dog person. I own a working dog. He's a livestock guardian, and I can tell the difference between my house dogs and then my livestock guardian dog. I mean, there's a huge difference, but he's not working basically other than guarding the house. So yeah, I do appreciate those people a lot. So I don't ever want to exclude them in my conversations at all, because I think they bring something different to the table, and not everybody has the capability physically, mentally, or live in an area where they can do those sorts of things. And for the betterment of the dog community, I think they do a lot of good, just as much as they do negative, and that's everybody in every situation.
Yeah, and to that note, we don't feel like every dogo has to be a working dogo. Not every dogo. A large majority of the dogos out there, honestly, a large majority of the dogos out there, if given the chance, won't engage with the hog. They'll choose not to. If they absolutely have to, they may catch out of fear. But if they're in a situation where they can get away, or they let the hog get away, they're going to do so. They're not going to instinctively do that, and that's just because a lot of that working instinct's been bred out of them. There's a lot of dogos that would make decent house dogs if the owner knows what a dominant dog breed is and how to handle that, and at the same time, if they have an outlet. A dogo doesn't need to be chasing hogs every week, but a dogo does need to have some kind of outlet to burn off energy, because they're a working dog. They need something to give them purpose, even if it's, walking or exercising or whatever they need to burn off that energy. But there's dogos out there that can make excellent pet home dogos or show dogos, and that's great. I just,
Yeah,
what we're looking for is how much of a tank dogos that we have may not necessarily make great house pets. Exactly.
mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to what we said. You could breed best to best, which is subjective to everybody, but it's always a crapshoot. There's always going to be good and bad in every litter. The goal is to be able to get a consistent litter, which goes back to, trying to pick pups at 8-10 weeks old. You want to be able to pick any pup from that litter and have some kind of success. That's the overall goal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you want to have some kind of purpose in what you're breeding. And if that dog is, structurally sound, but maybe not the best worker, you want to try to balance that out to breed her to a super hard male, something like that.
And then kind of what we've talked about, already in the podcast is just, go with your gut and trust it from the beginning. Don't, if there's a pup that, stands out to you and you really like that dog, more often than not, that one's going to be the one to go with. If there's one where it's like, well, there's one or two things that I really don't like about him, but everything else is great, I would, we're typically more faster to not, focus on those pups so much anymore. We want the whole complete package right off the bat. And that's kind of what we've learned is just to trust our gut and to go with first instincts have been most correct with us here lately as far as what we've been breeding.
What's a typical litter size?
I mean, for us, when we first got into the dogo, everybody was talking about how they don't breed well and how
small litters.
Yeah, small litters, 4 to 5, a lot of issues with the mothers, a lot of pups that, half a litter will get crushed or what have you. And I mean, we've just been
4 to 7 is pretty. I mean, even
we've had a few
5.
10s. We've had some 10s. We've had
I think 4 is probably our smallest litter.
4 was our smallest litter, but we've had
average is about 7.
Yeah, 7's about average, and I mean, we've had some excellent mothers.
We've been lucky.
We've bred 4 different females over the last 5 or 6 years, and all 4 of them have just been awesome mothers. I can't say enough about how lucky we've been there. And I mean, 2 of them maybe better than any other female I've ever seen as far as raising puppies, and that's any breed, any cross, like just excellent brood gyps.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And what are they like after
So
whelping?
we'll wean, it all depends on the mother and how everything's going. Typically 5 weeks, they're kind of starting to get tired of them. They'll let them nurse that 6th week, maybe 7th week. If you've already moved some pups, we're trying to move pups as soon as possible to get down to our numbers as much as we can, so it's easier on everybody. And if you move half a litter, usually they'll let them kind of keep nursing a couple weeks after because there's not so many. But by that 7th week, we're kind of transitioning them over to kibble and water. They're staying by themselves. We don't really let them see the mother a whole lot. The mother starts to dry up. Our best female, she had a litter, I think, end of December, and by late February, she was already hunting again. And in March, she had some big hunts. So, yeah, I mean, typically about 8 weeks, 9 weeks after they wean them, if they start, drying up, we're hunting them.
Awesome. And what does your diet look like for your dogs? You talked about a mid-range kibble or...
Oh yeah, just a medium range kibble. We've been, again, I think we told you 3 years ago, we were feeding Diamond High Energy and it's been doing well for us. We've been lucky with some healthy Dogos. We have a few great neighbors that always call us when they're cleaning out their freezers, stuff like that. We try to treat them when we can, but typically they're just eating kibble, and every dog is different to how much they eat. Some dogs will just, inhale it. Some are just nibblers for a while. Some put weight on like nothing. Some you need to keep shoveling them, down the kibble. But typically that's kind of what we go for.
If you follow like the Dogo Facebook pages, you see a lot of stuff about skin issues and skin allergies.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, just to be really honest, I think a lot of that comes from, one, they're white, and two, they're being fed something that's way too nutrient dense or way too, for lack of a better word, they're being fed a hot ration. If you're feeding a dog, this top shelf, super nutrient dense dog food, and that dog's hanging out in the backyard all week long, I mean, yeah, that dog's going to experience problems, just like we would if we ate something really rich every day and didn't do anything with it. We'd start to get hot. And I think that's a lot of the problem you see in this breed. These people go and buy a pup for a very high amount of money, and they feel that because that's an expensive pup or an investment, they want to give it the best nutrition possible, which I understand. But what you're doing is you're putting way too much of a hot fuel in this dog that doesn't necessarily need it. I mean, we've, like Ashley said, Diamond High Energy for years, and these dogs have done great on it. And that's not a, real high level nutrient dense kibble. It's just a very basic dog food that they do well.
Mm-hmm.
We've been lucky. I think we haven't had a whole lot of skin issues. And I think another thing is it depends on what age they are. If they're a young pup kind of going through a funky stage, you don't really want to over medicate them. You want their body to build up some kind of immunity. We've had a hot spot here or there on an adult, usually with a season change. They'll go through a coat change. Some of the girls, going through heat cycles, things like that. But we usually just doctor them up a little bit. We've never really changed foods much. It's never been I would say, a food allergy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a hot spot here or there, or just a young pup going through some kind of funk. But they usually come back on the other side easily.
When we do have those kind of issues, and just basically dog care in general. If you have dogs, Vetricin is an amazing product. We've used it for years. I mean, we keep a bottle in the fridge all the time. But like those little hot spots, those little itch patches, just kind of spray that a couple times a day, and usually it works itself out.
Some things that it was interesting. I've talked to a few people, and it makes sense. Is that sometimes it's just environmental. What's going on around you is something that you can't control, and it's just any kind of dog is going to react maybe to a certain sort of situation. Like if you live, for farmers spreading pesticide or something like that, and then things happen during that time or whatever. I know a lot of working dog folks have just said whatever happens, whatever time of season, they'll see one or two cases where they normally won't. And
that's typically when we'll see something, when it's a seasonal change, things like that.
If we haven't, we usually, I would say 95% of where we hunt is always going to be really close around us. But say we, sometimes we'll go like an hour east or an hour south and we'll hunt somewhere different. Just that little bit of different type of vegetation, you can see it affect the dogs a little bit. Not while they're hunting, but like the next day, you'll notice that maybe they'll have a little bit of a little bit heavier breathing. You can tell they're kind of clogged up in the nose or some hot spots on their coat, just something different that they're not used to. So they kind of get a funk for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Another thing you always kind of explain to new Dogo owners is that this is a white breed. So like your Labrador, they get nicked or they have something funky on their skin, or you're not going to see it. A Dogo, it's going to show up right away, especially a young Dogo.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about if you were going to give advice to somebody who was going to start a similar program like you guys and using strictly Dogos, what are some things that you would tell them and some of the things that you learned that you wish you knew before?
Well, I mean, for one, like it's very easy to go out there and spend some money in a hurry and buy 2 or 3 Dogo pups, or if you wanted to start with one and you're already a couple grand in the hole. Don't be in a hurry to get a dog. Talk to people that are doing it. There's other Dogo hunters out there. If you can, go hunting with different Dogos before you buy one. See them in the woods. See if this is really what you want to do. A lot of people out there that hog hunt traditionally, they're probably not going to say, you know what, let me try this, just because of the logistics of it. It's the hardest part of this was getting started, transitioning a yard to where you just have Dogo Argentinos and you're hunting that. I mean,
it's going to take patience to get that ball rolling. But once you have the ball rolling, and especially with each generation, it becomes a little bit easier with each generation to start. But it does take patience to get that ball rolling, especially if you've already started a Dogo as a lead-in catch dog. They've already kind of sat back waiting for the other dogs to do the legwork. But if you could start a couple of young Dogos in the woods to actively encourage them to use their nose, you might bump a hog. I'm not saying you might catch them right away, but it may be eventually. And like Andrew, if you're going to be in the network for looking for puppies, I would look at the programs maybe first to see who's really doing it as far as the all Dogo thing or running their Dogos on the ground, and try to go hunting with them and see if that is something that you want to do.
Don't get hung up on names and bloodlines either. There are Dogo lines that are traditionally more hunting lines for sure. But as far as like a specific parent or one type of dog that you have to have in your pedigree, I mean, I've seen a lot of great dogs that there's trash out there from those dogs. They just don't talk about it as much. So, believe what your eyes and what you feel and go off of that. Don't just buy something because of the name. And really don't be in a hurry to spend that money, because there's plenty of people out there that are going to want to take it. There's if somebody can get $2,000 off you, they will. So just be patient, hunt, and then when you see what you like, figure out what you want to do on that. We were talking about like the transitioning and the start of it all and how it's difficult. In episode 61, we spend a good time talking about how we started those 3 brothers at 8 months old without any puppy trainer and how like easy that part transition. Ashley and I have seen a lot of people that, maybe kind of said that they were going to move this way and start hunting an all Dogo pack. And they get, several steps in and then they kind of turn off the road. But the ones that kind of stick with it, once they get started and kind of get to where we were around that time we did the podcast, those people are all still in it because it works, and, just again, we're less than an hour from San Antonio. There's places that we hunt that there's 1,000 home subdivisions, less than a mile from there. Our places are getting smaller. It's a lot harder to hunt, the deep, wide rangy hound type dogs that really burn down the country. So, I mean, it's not just here, it's other parts of the country too, that hunting land is becoming more scarce. So to have a big athletic dog that can, work small areas, we've turned loose on 20 acres before next to like, highways and hunted these small patches. We were very careful about it, but you can hunt areas where other dogs can't get to. And that's a big plus with these Dogos. I always tell people you can hunt a shorter range dog. And when I say shorter range, I mean their drive to cover a bunch of ground isn't as big. They hunt thoroughly, but they don't hunt such a wide loop. But you can hunt a shorter range dog on bigger places. You can't hunt a big range dog on small places. You know, it doesn't work that way. So that's been real helpful for us. I think the cost is the biggest. The initial cost, and then, like I talked about earlier, is that your chance of getting one that's going to be wired for this and have everything mentally that it's going to need to be a good hunting dog, you know, you're taking a chance on. I think a seasoned hunter that has, you know, your more typical type of hog dogs that wanted to get into Dogos and did the kind of, I sent a Dogo to a guy in Louisiana a couple weeks ago that has, you know, he's been trying to get into Dogos for a couple years now, but he has a bunch of really high quality, great hunting dogs, you know, the typical cur type crosses. You know, he has a male Dogo catch dog that he's had for years. And you know, he's just wanting another one to kind of start. But I mean, the ones that have seen them perform in the woods and know what they do, they see what they are athletically, and they can appreciate that. You know, it's like having a really, really awesome middle linebacker playing on your team that can cover a lot of ground, and that's handy. No matter how you hunt, you know, a good athletic dog that's going to catch whatever you put in front of it. That's handy to have. But you know, the sticker shock, I think, keeps the traditional hunters away. I think the stigma of the Dogo that doesn't catch hogs. Regripping is a word you hear a lot used against the breed. And by regripping, what they're referring to is, you know, when we talked about earlier, a pit bull or an American bulldog, you know, they catch a hog. Typically, there's no rebite. Whatever that bite is, once they've sunk in, they're going to hold until you get them off. And that's how it should be with the pit bull as well, or with the Dogo as well. But, you know, there's a lot of videos and a lot of Dogos out there that are known for kind of what they call gumming or regripping, where they're just kind of chewing, you know, and it's not so much a control thing. It's just something that certain dogs in the breed do. And for us, you know, the big part of how we evaluate these dogs is on the hunt. You know, how they hunt, how they search, can they find hogs, do they have the nose? And then if they're holding that hog until I get there and put my hands on it, and I'm not losing a hog because that hog's breaking the dog off, there are things that I wouldn't say I overlook, but I'm not as concerned about. And for me, if my dog is regripping or repositioning his mouth to get a better bite, or moving around to where he can anchor himself better, and I'm not losing that hog anyway, then for me it's not as big of a concern. It's definitely not something I'm going to call a dog over as long as we're not losing hogs. You know, once dogs start getting knocked off or hogs getting away, that's a different deal. But just to see a dog kind of change where he's at on the hog as far as his positioning, I don't necessarily see that as a callable offense. But that's, again, something that traditional hunters have heard a lot about. So that also makes them more leery to try the Dogo.
Their size and athleticism give them the ability to stop a hog from running, and we're not going to have a chase. We're not going to be chasing the same hog for miles or for hours. I think another positive is that they're silent. So when we are hunting big or small places, they're a silent dog. They're not going to open up on track. They're not going to be opening up behind a hog that's running. We've had Dogos maybe babble when they're caught from, I would say, excitement, or, you know, maybe a handful, but they're a silent breed. And that's a quality that we enjoy from them. And then yeah, the stamina, the athleticism, the agility to be able to stay caught and to work a hog for a long time, but their athleticism to control a hog. And another thing we've seen from Dogos is we like a Dogo that is calm throughout the whole hunt, the whole situation, being caught, as maybe your comparison with the pit bull.
If you would have told me that we would have been at about 30 Dogos at this point, you know, and all the scenarios and hunts that we've gone through, I would have anticipated way more issues as far as, you know, dog aggression or just problems. And I mean, they've really been a really level breed. Considering other breeds and other crosses that I've worked with, that things like breaking them off of livestock or breaking them off trash, or, you know, being able to put 2 or 3 of them in the box together. I mean, they really have a really good mind for this. They're programmed well, for at least for our style, for what we do and for how we use them. They fit perfectly.
And I think we thought we were going to have more trouble as far as their nose finding hogs. And like Andrew touched on, our dogs, our own breedings, or from other people's yards, we found that they naturally do have an ability to use their nose. You just have to build on that.
Yeah.
How important is obedience training during the early years as far as keeping this kind of more level-headed nature of them?
Well, again, with same as the hunting instincts, but just with a handle in general, we want everything to come as naturally as possible. I mean, we bond with these dogs, we communicate with these dogs, but it's not like there's a whole lot of commands or a lot of interaction vocally when we're in the woods. I mean, there's times where we'll turn out and we'll hunt a place for an hour and we'll load back up. And I mean, we'll talk to the dogs, but it's not like we're giving them commands or, it's very much they're on the ground. They know what they're doing. We're just letting natural instincts take over. But yeah, there's a handle that we put on them, and beeping, that shock collar tone is a big thing for them to learn. But we don't overdo it. We don't try to put too much into these dogs' heads.
I think we do set boundaries from an early age. These are big, strong, powerful, driven dogs. So from an early age that you have a boundary, a line in the sand, that things that are okay and that are not okay. But I wouldn't say we're super heavy-handed or dominant, and even on hunts we're commanding them. It's very natural. But at the very least, things like load up, collar up, walk on a leash, things like that, ride in the box. I could say that could be training.
A big thing, and not to, we haven't had an issue with it, but as far as with any dogo, working or house dog or what have you, with the older ones, if they get into a position to where they think that they are more important than you or that they come first, I mean, you're really setting up a dangerous scenario. So like Ashley said, at a very young age, you have to instill with them that they are below you, because once they think that they have more right or they're the dominant one, they're going to test you. And when they're older and they're bigger and they're more powerful, there's a lot of bad things that can happen with that. So you definitely have to, from an early age, be the dominant one in the relationship.
It's the same old saying, it might be cute when they're 50 pounds, but it's not going to be cute when they're 90 pounds, or when they're babies, it's going to be the same. So you need to start early. But I think it all goes back to that pack mentality that we try to have from day one on the yard. There's definitely a pack, a family, a hierarchy, if you'd say, when we're out there together, even on the yard. And we really try to keep things calm at all times.
It doesn't matter where the dogs are in that hierarchy. Everybody's going to get their own space and their own alone time that's in their area with nobody else. We don't try to cohabitate dogs. We don't kennel dogs together. They have their own space, their own area. That's for them. And it seems like there's a respect among the yard that everybody's got their own spot, and that kind of helps out as well.
Mm-hmm. Here's kind of a goofy question that I like to ask everybody, and it kind of wraps everything up, is if you had all the time, the money, the space, what would be the second breed that you would run or have?
Well, I think we're always going to be fans of those bully Arabs.
Yeah.
I mean, those are some impressive dogs.
I think
They're a hound, man.
Yeah, I think it would be like what we were going to do with them. If we were going to hunt hogs with them, I mean, with the Dogo covering its own aspect, it would probably be something with a little bit more nose and speed, like maybe a hound. I mean, to be honest, if we didn't have these Dogos and we were still hunting hogs, we would probably just get some dirty Heinz 57 South Texas bred type hunting dogs, and that would be. And I mean, that's basically there's hundreds, if not thousands, of them down here. Different lines, different crosses, different breedings, and I mean, just really. I have a deep appreciation for those type of dogs. I love that there's people out there that, still hunt those type of dogs on big places, catching a bunch of hogs behind them. That's awesome. For where we hunt and for how we hunt and our pastures, this all Dogo pack works really well for us.
I mean, we tell people all the time that we can respect all different kinds of breeds and all different kinds of dog work. We are big fans of that, but this just works for us. It's practical, it's useful, and it's effective.
You know, kind of going back to what we were talking about with the Dogo and the regripping, if you watch the videos of the Australian dogs, and I mean, a lot of them are one out where it's just one dog on a much bigger hog by themselves. I mean, there is a lot of repositioning and regripping and kind of babbling. You know, it's not that pit bull held on, locked, no sound. You know, it's a little bit more of a combat type deal. So, I mean, it's just kind of a neat thought that I've always had, that people are so quick to, you know, condone the Dogo for catching like that. But these dogs in Australia that catch hundreds of pigs and catch, you know, with a regrippy type style that, you know, are still very much in control, but are repositioning themselves a lot. You know, they seem to kind of not see that as much, or maybe they don't see that as much of a fault. But
No, I mean, we just really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I mean, this has become a project for me and Andrew, and we've built our own little Dogo farm here that we just kind of want to see it through. We know that there's other breeds, there's pros and cons to all different kinds of breeds, but this is something that we're passionate about and we want to build on and make our Dogos better. That we're not telling anybody it's right or wrong, or you have to do it just like us or have Dogos just like us, but we're trying to build on our own program and make our Dogos better, and we want our Dogos to be able to do it all.
I think when you first talked to us, you know, 3 years ago, we were kind of getting on the track and seeing if, you know, these dogs were able to kind of run the race. And I think now it's like, oh, they definitely can do this. Now let's just see how fast and athletic and how great of a hunter can we create. You know, it's not a question of if they can or not, but what's the limit? And we've seen some really nice dogs that we're really proud of.
Yeah, and I think you've caught us at an exciting time. Like Andrew said, we were just kind of getting success, our foot in the door as far as building our own program 3 years ago. And now we have our first third to fourth generation Deguello to Deguello litter in the box right now. So it's an exciting time, and we want to see this through as far as our project on the Dogo.
In episode 61, there's a lot of enthusiasm and optimism there, and now it's a little bit more just knowledge. You know, we know more of what we speak of.
Situations.
That's a couple hundred hogs ago, and we feel like we've got a better idea of what's.
Nothing is absolute in breeding. You have to just allow the dog opportunity and experience what they naturally show you.
I do want to say, just because, you know, we are on this deal and we have the chance to, is just the greatest single performing dog that I've hunted with, will ever hunt with, will ever have the privilege of seeing in the woods. You know, he's a first generation Deguello Dogo. We're lucky enough to still have him. That's Buzzsaw. And I mean, like, I couldn't say enough things about how great that dog is. And I mean, that's comparing him to any other singular dog that I've seen as far as by themselves and being able to do it. And I mean, I've hunted behind some dogs that I consider to be really top tier hunting dogs. And that's not a brag. That was a first generation. And I don't think as breeders, you know, you really can't take credit for anything until you start getting into that third or fourth generation of what you're breeding. So, I mean, I don't feel like we did anything to make him great. I think that it was just the dogs that were in his pedigree beforehand, and then we gave him opportunities to show us what he could do. And I mean,
we've had other great dogs with other great performances. It's just the consistency through the years, all year with that.
If we didn't own a dog like that as early on into the program as we did, I don't know if we'd have been so willing to keep going when times got hard or things slowed down, or maybe we didn't have the talent on the yard that we really wanted. But having him so early into the program showed us that it's like
possible.
Yeah, I mean to have just really, there's not enough I could say on the dog about how stellar he is. So having that very early on and just seeing him do what he does, it just, that's really kind of sold us on this dream a lot more than anything else could have.
And just speaking of Buzzy, not to go off the rails here, but we were speaking on the Dogo community as a whole and the show Dogos and seeing maybe the two types between the two. Something that's been going on here recently in the Dogo community is as far as more people pushing to do the all Dogo pack, is all Dogo pack hunting competitions. And that's something it's been very positive for the breed. Getting the community together, the hunting community itself together, is always a great thing, and it keeps the passion going, and it keeps us as well. You come home refueled and wanting to do better to create and to keep these hunting Dogos.
It's also kind of helped kind of keep that ties with Argentina. A lot of these places, they'll bring judges from Argentina. A lot of them that were, they knew a lot of the originators within the breed, or their family were originators in the breed. A lot of these Dogo pioneers that had a lot to do with these dogs in Argentina come here and judge these hunting competitions. And it's a really good networking opportunity. Same thing with Europe. A lot of them, they'll bring a couple guys from Europe that are experts in the breed, and they'll judge as well. I mean, some of these places, some of these contests will have, 6 or 7 judges. So you really kind of get that networking and that bonding. We've met a lot of other hunters across the country that do this. And it's interesting, you see these people that they'll spend their whole vacation for the year, traveling cross country and doing these competitions and really putting that time into their Dogos. There is a little bit of a fevered enthusiasm among Dogo people. Yes. Dogo people are crazy for their Dogos. And that's, I'm sure that's true with a lot of working breeds, but it's good to see it in this breed, and that there's people that, care enough to get fired up about their dogs.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, my last question is, where do you see your program in 5 years from now?
5 years. Right.
Well, I mean, I feel like I don't want to change directions. I feel like the main goal has always been the same. We've never, shifted. We've never said, well, this isn't working. Let's go a different direction. Like the main focus is to have a dog that we can kick out. And I think something with these Dogos, we've talked about nose several times and tracking several times. Another big thing with these Dogos has been a plus is what I call quick to strike. When I kick a dog out of the box, how long until they are actively engaged hunting? And we've, even this year, there's been many times where within a couple minutes of kicking out, we're not even done putting all of our stuff on yet, and they've already got a hog caught. That's that quick to strike, hit the ground running, just searching mentality. I want to keep on with that. I want to have it to where when I turn 3 or 4 dogs loose, they're hunting as soon as they're out of the box. A little bit of more nose would always be great. I think you're starting to see a shape. I think the size of our Dogos is going to continue to go down. If you look at the average size of our males compared to other yards, I mean, it's much smaller, and I think that's going to continue to be the trend. But I mean, we'll probably end up with an 80, what I hope is an 80-pound athletic dog that can run for miles. It's got a good nose on him, but it's not going to just run off to run off. He's going to have a thorough search to him and work tight circles, work tracks, know how to use their nose, and then catch on to whatever's there. We have other projects coming in that aren't Deguello Dogos that are, from other breedings, from other places. I'm excited to see how those match up against our stuff. I mean, 5 years from now, we could have maybe 1 or 2 Deguello Dogos and everything else be something different, or maybe have Deguello Dogos, but the breeding behind them would be different from what we have now. But we, we just see. But the actual what they're doing and how they hunt, that is something that's kind of always going to be our main focus. Everything else is not as important.
And again, hunting one purebred dog gives you a compass of what true north is and what your goal is with this breed. We might ourselves, our own program, have specific goals as far as the whole package, but yeah, I mean, health, the better nose, the active searching, the zero hesitation, all things that we're always going to be looking for.